Rayo, a 27-year-old Nigerian, had just completed a National Youth Service Corps (NYSC) program. Overjoyed, she had called her parents to share the news, telling them she will return home over the weekend. Her family in Port Harcourt had been eagerly preparing for her arrival, a homecoming that promised to be both emotional and celebratory. In the village where she had served, her departure was bittersweet. The locals had come out to bid her farewell. Some of the school children she had taught clung to her, tears streaming down their faces, begging her not to leave. But her time there had come to an end, and she had to move on. The journey from Sokoto to Port Harcourt was long and grueling. As the bus rumbled along the highway, Rayo found her thoughts drifting at a particular stretch of road. Memories she had buried resurfaced. 8 years ago, during a school excursion, a tragic accident had claimed the lives of many of her classmates. The haunting images were still vivid in her mind, a weight she carried silently. Her reverie was shattered by a sudden blood-curdling scream from a fellow passenger. A trailer had lost its brakes and was careening wildly towards their bus. Before Rayo could comprehend what was happening, the world around her plunged into chaos. The squishing of metal panic cries filled the air, and then darkness. When she opened her eyes, she was staring at the sterile white ceiling of a hospital room. Pain coursed through her body, and she realized she was bandaged in several places. News of the accident reached her family through a neighbor who had witnessed the crash on her way back from the market. The woman had recognized Rayo and rushed her to the hospital, notifying her parents afterward. As Rayo's physical wounds began to heal, something unexplainable began to unfold. Despite multiple blood transfusions and IV drips to replenish the blood she had lost, her tests baffled the doctors. Each time they ran tests, it was as though no blood or fluids had been administered. The question loomed: what was draining Rayo's blood? Her parents, desperate for answers, turned to spiritual help. Pastors, imams, and traditional healers were called to pray and intercede on her behalf. Yet, the responses were cryptic. They spoke of a debt to be repaid, of innocent souls Rayo had imprisoned. Confused and heartbroken, her parents questioned her relentlessly. Had she wronged anyone, made use of taking part in anything that could bring about such a curse? Rayo, bewildered, instead, she had no such dealings. Her best friend, who had rushed to her side, defended her, recounting how Rayo had been a model student, known for her piety and academic dedication. Her routine was simple: hostel, lecture hall, library, and church. How could someone so disciplined and kind be accused of such a thing? But the mystery deepened. The words of the spiritual leader seemed to carry meanings beyond their literary interpretations. Rayo's mother clung to prayer, pleading with God to reveal the truth, to shed the light on the darkness surrounding her daughter. One night, as the hospital ward fell silent, Rayo stirred in her sleep. Her mom, dozing off beside her bed, was startled awake by Rayo's soothing anguish cries. "You bullied me first! You bullied me first!" she screamed, her voice filled with terror. Her mother jolted upright, shaking her daughter awake. Rayo's eyes fluttered open, her face drenched in sweat. She was trembling, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "What is it, my child?" her mother asked, her voice trembling with fear. Through her sobs, Rayo began to speak, her voice spilling out in broken fragments. It's clear now what the pastors and imams meant. It wasn't about days of imprisonment. It's them, those souls, they want justice. Her mother, confused but patient, held her trembling hands. "What do you mean? Speak, my daughter. Tell me everything." And so, Rayo began to recount a story long buried, a memory that had clawed its way back from the depths of her mind. Rayo had always been the quiet girl, the one who observed more than she spoke, the one who had learned to live in the shadows, unnoticed, unremarkable. Growing up in a small rural village, she had never imagined that one day she would walk through the gates of such a grand institution. It was a place she had only heard of in whispers, where the children of the wealthy and privileged roamed the pristine corridors and enjoyed an education few could even dream of. To Rayo, this school felt like something of a fairy tale. Its towering buildings and lush green lawns walled away from the dusty part of her home. She had earned a place here through sheer brilliance, a scholarship that seems too good to be true. But now that she was here, she felt small, like an outsider in a world that wasn't hers to inhabit. Everything was so new, so grand, and it left her wide-eyed with wonder. The classrooms were immaculate. They always gleamed with polished floors, and the scent of fresh paint still lingered in the air. The students here, they didn't look like her. They walked with an air of confidence, wearing their uniforms as if they were tailored specifically for them. Their every step exuding the luxury that Rayo could never dream of. One afternoon, as she wandered through the campus, taking the beauty of her new environment, she was approached by a group of 3 girls. They were dressed in their school uniforms, their faces painted with the unmistakable signs of wealth and privilege. But even if they had been wearing the same clothes as everyone, it was clear they held a different air about them, one of superiority, of entitlement. The leader of the group, a girl with sharply painted lips and an haughty expression, looked Rayo up and down with an air of amusement. "First time seeing a school like this?" she teased, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "You must have come from the village." "Huh?" Rayo flinched, her heart sinking. She had been used to the teasing back home, but here it felt sharper, more cutting. They made no effort to hide their disdain, and Rayo, despite her effort to stand tall, felt small, insignificant, like an insect beneath their expensive shoes. It was the first week of the school, and Rayo had managed to save up just enough to buy a second-hand uniform. It wasn't the expensive, perfectly pressed one that the others wore, but it was all she could afford. As she walked into the classroom, the 3 girls turned to look at her, their eyes narrowing. "Is that your uniform?" One of them sneered. "It looks like it's been through a battle," another added, causing the others to burst into laughter. Rayo felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment, her heart sinking. She had always known she was different, but this hurt more than she expected. After the bullying class, Rayo walked to the school's restroom. She locked herself in one of the stalls and let the tears fall freely. She had tried to act as though it didn't bother her, but the sting of their words was too much. Sitting on the cold floor, she stopped quietly, wiping her face with the sleeve of her uniform, feeling completely alone in a sea of students. One morning, as Rayo walked to class, she passed by the group of 3 girls standing near the school's grand entrance. Their laughter echoed in the air, and Rayo felt their eyes on her. "Look at her," the leader said, her voice dripping with mockery. "She probably thinks this is a castle. Did they even ask us where she came from?" Her friends giggled cruelly, and Rayo's face burned with humiliation. She tried to walk faster, but their laughter followed her, echoing in her mind all day. The weight of the day's bullying had piled up on Rayo as the final bell rang, signaling the end of the school day. She walked slowly to the school gate, feeling utterly defeated. The girls had made cruel remarks all day about her appearance, her background, and even her accent. The moment she stepped outside the school, the tears flowed. She ducked into an alley behind the school, her sobs echoing off the walls. No one saw her, no one cared. She felt trapped, isolated in her pain. During a classroom debate, Rayo raised her hand to contribute an idea she had worked on for days. As soon as she spoke, the 3 girls exchanged amused glances. "Wow, Rayo, that's so deep. Did you come up with all that by yourself?" the leader asked sarcastically. "Oh wait, let me guess. Did your village teach you this?" They good. And the other students, they didn't laugh out loud, seemed to look at her with pity. Rayo, stoned and hurt, fell silent. wishing she could shrink into the floor. One afternoon, Rayo gathered all her courage and walked into the head teacher's office. Her heart pounding in her chest, she explained everything, the teasing, the insults, and how it was affecting her school life. The head teacher, who had a reputation for being strict, nodded sympathetically. "I understand, Rayo, but you know, the girls involved are from some of our most important families. The parents donate a lot to the school. I will have a word with them, but we need to be careful with these situations." Rayo left the office feeling dismissed, the weight of his words settling heavily on her shoulders. The case was brushed aside, no action taken. 3 girls, along with their leader, finding ways to remind her of her place. They laughed at her clothes, her accent, the way she carried herself, and yet Rayo endured it all in silence, hoping for a day when they would simply leave her alone. Then came the announcement of the field trip to Olumorok, an event that excited every student in the school except for Rayo. She knew her parents couldn't afford the fees for such an extravagant excursion, and she had no intention of telling them. They had already given so much to get her here. The thought of adding one more burden to their already heavy load was unbearable. But the girls didn't forget. It was as if their daily mission was to make Rayo's life as miserable as possible, and the announcement of the trip gave them the ammunition. "Oh, poor Rayo," one of them quoted mockingly. "Can't even afford a field trip? I guess it's not even enough for your chocolate." Rayo simply nodded, pretending it didn't bother her. Though inside, she was seething. She longed for the day they would leave her be, for the day when the school would finally realize the cruelty of their actions. Rayo sat alone on a bench, her lunch untouched beside her. The girls had done it again, mocking her for not being able to pay for the field trip. She could hear their voices in the distance, their laughter cutting through the air like a sharp knife. She pretended to be absorbed in her book, but the words blurred as tears filled her eyes. She cried softly, trying not to make a sound, wishing she could be invisible, wishing the pain would stop. Days later, after another round of insults, Rayo went to the school's guidance counselor. She poured her heart out, explaining how the bullying was affecting her grades and mental health. The counselor listened, nodding thoughtfully, but after a moment, she sighed. "I will speak to the girls, Rayo, but you know how things work around here. The families have a lot of influence. We can't afford to lose that support." The counselor gave her a pitying smile, but nothing changed. Rayo left the office with the same sense of helplessness, knowing the authority figures in the school. Rayo's faith in the school's authority was shattered after these 2 attempts. The lack of action from the head teacher and the guidance counselor made it clear that her suffering didn't matter. The school was more concerned with maintaining the favor of powerful families than protecting never intervene publicly. The more Rayo endured, the more desperate and isolated she felt. Her daily life at school was a series of small humiliations, whispers behind her back, cold remarks in the hallways, and laughter that followed her wherever she went. The school, which should have been a sanctuary for learning, became a battleground where she fought silently, without help, without allies. And so, Rayo, feeling more alone with each passing day, began to believe that there was no escape. The school's negligence only deepened her sense of entrapment. She quietly endured, unable to see a way out, until the fateful day when the idea of permanent relief came to her, a tragic and desperate solution that she would later regret. The day of the field trip arrived, and the air was filled with a sense of excitement. Students gathered in clusters, bustling with eager chatter about the journey that awaited them. Meanwhile, those who hadn't paid for the trip like Rayo sat silently on the sidelines, watching the others with a mix of envy and resignation. The school bell rang, signaling the start of the morning assembly, and soon the students lined up according to their classes and heights. After the morning devotion, the head teacher stood before the crowd, addressing everyone with his usual stern demeanor. He announced that those who had not paid the excursion fee were to continue with their regular school activities. supervised by the remaining teachers. The students who had paid were instructed to remain on the assembly grounds. Rayo's aunt sank, but she remained outwardly calm, pretending not to care. She watched the excited faces of other students as they prepared for their trip, while she stayed behind, invisible and forgotten. Once the executioners departed, a strange sense of peace enveloped the school. Rayo, for the first time since her arrival, experienced a quiet day free from the taunting and bullying of the three girls who had made her life unbearable. There was a calm in the air that she had never known. She found herself wishing, almost desperately, that her days at the school could always be like this, free from the malicious whispers and quiet taunts that constantly echoed in her ears. And then, as she sat in the stillness of the day, something dark and unsettling crept into her mind. She realized that the source of her dread, the reason her days felt so heavy, was the constant presence of those three girls. What if, she thought, she could make them go away for a while? What if she could stop them from tormenting her, even if just for a little while? A thought, wild and reckless, flickered in her mind. What if she caused an accident? Nothing fatal, just enough to injure them, to stop them from coming to school for a while. The idea was absurd, she knew, but in that moment, it felt like a way out. At first, she tried to push it away, but the memory of that cruelty lingered, and the thought gnawed at her. She couldn't forget the way they had treated her, the way the school had done nothing to stop it. That evening, as she prepared for the students' return from the excursion, a plan began to take shape in her mind. She waited until the time was right, then slipped out of the school and found a secluded spot along the road where the buses would pass. She had heard a woman, a myth, that okra, a slim, slippery vegetable, could cause an accident if spilled on the road. In her desperation, she decided to put it to test. She poured the bowl of freshly ground okra on the road, positioning herself just out of the sight in the nearby bushes. She waited, heart pounding in her chest, watching for the familiar yellow bus that would carry her tormentors. When she finally saw the bus approaching in the distance, she held her breath, the tires, the okra, and in that moment, the bus slid uncontrollably, crashing violently into a nearby tree. The world seemed to slow down as Rayo watched in horror. The accident, as dreadful as it was, wasn't the minor mishap she had hoped for. It was catastrophic. The bus stumbled, and in the chaos, only the driver and the 5 students out of 30 survived. Rayo's heart raced in her chest, mine reeling as the sounds of the crash echoed in her ears. In a panic, she turned and fled, running home to avoid being seen. Her thought a tangled mess of fear and guilt. The news of the accident spread through the community like wildfire. The police arrived the next morning, questioning the driver and the school authorities. The driver was arrested for reckless driving, and the school was scrutinized for inadequate security. The tragic event caused many parents to pull their children from the school, and the institution was swiftly shut down. The driver was eventually sentenced to 10 years in prison, while the school principal received a 5-year sentence for negligence. But the true cause of the accident remained a mystery. At least until years later, when Rayo, lying in a hospital bed, could no longer keep her secret. In the silence of her pain, as she screamed in her sleep, the truth escaped her lips. Her mother, who had been at her side, heard the confession and in shock fainted. The realization of her daughter's guilt struck her like a blow, and the weight of it crushed her. Rayo was discharged from the hospital weeks later, but the toll of the accident had claimed more than just her peace of mind. She had lost an arm in the crash, and the guilt of her actions would haunt her forever. The memory of that day, of the lives changed by her desperate attempt to escape her pain, would never leave her. No matter how much she tried to move on, no matter how hard she fought to forget, the weight of her guilt was always there, a constant reminder of the price she had paid for her fleeting moment of revenge.